Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Erasmus Expeditions. We are back with episode 18 of the Help Action series here on the channel. This is kind of one part interview, one part Q&A, one part topic discussion. And tonight we are going to be discussing the creative process. And I'm very, very excited to have my guest on this evening, Jeremy Pillipow from Black Magic Craft. So, Jeremy, you son of a bitch, how are you?
Good. I feel like there's a reference there that I should know the line in retort, and I don't. So I feel bad.
Have you seen Predator?
Yeah, but it was like 15 years ago. It was the last time I watched it.
That's
I mean,
fair.
unless it's the reference of mud camouflage, I don't know. I don't remember it.
It's a very dated film. It didn't age super well in a lot of ways, but it's kind of a guilty pleasure. But it made really good sense with Help Action. So tell everybody where they can find you on the internet and kind of what you're known for. Plug anything that you kind of want to plug, and we'll kick things off.
Well, everybody knows me as Black Magic Craft. I build terrain for Dungeons and Dragons and other tabletop games. I make lots of videos about it on YouTube. Black Magic Craft, obviously. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I don't really use, but YouTube is the main heart of the whole thing.
So how long have you been crafting?
I mean, I've always been building and making things as long as I can remember, my whole life. But in terms of this type of craft and building these types of things for games, maybe 4 years now. Not that long, really.
Yeah. I think that makes sense.
In terms of actual stuff for gaming and like 28 millimeter, before that, as a kid, I did model kits and messed around and made things for action figures and built things. But this type of crafting, yeah, about 4 years.
Yeah, like I said, that makes sense. That's about when I started watching your channel, and I was pretty sure that you had just started at that point.
Yeah.
I think you made some kind of video where you were melting polystyrene.
Yeah, that would have been one of the first 5 videos maybe at that time. And yeah, my channel is really kind of serves as a document of the progression of my hobby. It wasn't a channel that started with a guy who's been doing this a long time sharing his expertise. It was like I started just as somebody who'd just gotten into it, was really enthusiastic, really excited, and wanted to share that. So the videos and the projects and the topics, they go from me being a beginner to me being where I am now. And there actually is a linear progression of my own skills and interests and knowledge of the hobby and the craft, which is I think it's kind of interesting, actually.
It really is, honestly. And it's really nice because you can actually see the progressions that you've made, not only just in skill level, but in your tastes. There's been a lot of times when your older videos where you talked about things that you didn't care for or that you weren't ever going to do. And then, several videos on, you're like, then okay, I'm going to do this. And it's really neat to watch that happen because like as a creator, as an artist, like you're constantly pushing your boundaries. You need to be.
Yeah. And I think as a gamer, as a game master, your needs change constantly, and you never get the formula quite right, and you're always trying to make it better. And terrain is the same thing, and how to utilize it. And you're always finding new ways, things that I thought were perfect, like that were really the best way to go about it, are now things that maybe I don't use anymore. And yeah, you can see all that progression throughout the videos. And the funny thing is, I think one of the biggest not problems, but an issue with what I do as a content creator is that if somebody just stumbles into what I'm making today and they're really new and they're just finding out about this hobby and they see that and I'm trying to teach them how to do it, it can be really intimidating if I'm working on a higher scale project. It could seem like there's a huge barrier to entry, that it's complicated, intimidating, expensive, yada, yada, yada. So I always try to, go back and forth between more user-friendly content and more advanced. But if somebody were to just find it, they can, and if they're feeling intimidated, they can actually go to episode 1 and watch them in sequence and be like, man, a couple of years ago, this guy who now makes a living doing this also was terrible at this and didn't know what he was doing, but he did it anyway. And that's kind of like what I try to encourage people to do, is just do it. Just do it anyway and make a thing. Probably going to suck. But if you have fun, then you'll probably want to make another thing and it'll suck less, and make 10 things, and 10 things probably going to be pretty cool.
Well, and like you said, just like being a game master or a player, like if you're not constantly learning from other people, then you're going to stagnate.
Yeah.
And that's never good for you, especially as a creator.
Yeah.
And you need to build a pretty solid foundation of understanding. And if you don't know how to cut foam, for example, then cutting 1,000 bricks out for, a building is going to be incredibly difficult and daunting.
Yeah. If you don't know how to cut one brick, cutting 100 bricks is going to seem like a really, really daunting task. So yeah, for sure.
Awesome. Well, I'm very, very glad to have you on. Like I said, I've been a fan of yours for a long time. I've watched a lot of pretty much every single video of yours that I know of, at least. A lot of which I've watched with my son.
That's a lot of videos.
Yeah, like I said, I've been watching for a long time, back whenever you first started. And I've had my channel for around the same time. BrigadeCon 2015 is when I launched my channel. But I very rarely post crafting videos.
Mm-hmm.
I do.
I mean, you post a lot of
crafting.
Yeah, and you post a lot of, I've seen you do your share of crafting in photos.
Yes.
Right. In groups and stuff like that. So
absolutely. I mainly take pictures and then kind of try to piece everything together towards the end of it. But just, my crafting style and filming don't go well together. So I don't know how well that would turn out.
Yeah. But I mean, that's a real challenge with, my crafting style and video doesn't go well together either. I have to adapt it to video and severely alter how I work naturally versus on video. It's not exactly the same. So it's tricky. That's one of the biggest challenges of doing that kind of video content.
As a matter of fact, I have a question about that. So let's go ahead and hop right into that. So you, like you said, you record a lot of the crafting that you do, and obviously that's going to change things. Camera, lighting angles, being aware of where all of that is, making sure to talk aloud about your thought process, things of that nature. So now that you've been doing this for a while, what is the marked difference between your creative process on camera versus off camera?
Well, one is that there is no more creative process off camera. Everything is on camera. Me personally creating doesn't exist anymore. There's just not time for it. Everything has to be content. So, I'm only releasing one video a week, and it might be a 15 to 30-minute video, but that video generally is 30 to 40 hours of work. Sometimes there's ones that are definitely easier when I need time to do other things. If it's just like a talking head, that stuff's easy. From building something, whether it's small or big, it's going to be a lot of time, which means that, then I'm not really making other stuff on the side for myself. It just doesn't happen. So basically all of my creativity now exists while I'm filming. So it's a little bit dangerous in the sense that I no longer get to have that sort of free form creativity with no strings attached, where I can just let things kind of run and change things. Now I have to go into everything with a bit of a plan, make sure it's something that I can finish within a certain amount of time. I can't start anything that's too involved, and I can't start something that has too much experimentation, because I have to make sure that I can complete it in that time frame for that week. So it, at the same time, severely limits me, but it also forces me to be very economic with my time and very creative with time-saving things. So it's a double-edged sword. It's good and it's bad.
Have you found that it has adjusted who you are as a creator or an artist, like your identity in that way?
In the sense of filming while doing it, or
like the fact that you don't get to do freeform creation.
Yeah, it certainly has. I would say to make a comparison, if you're a musician, it's the difference between sitting around at a campfire and making up songs with your buddies and just enjoying music versus trying to write a hit song. You're always trying to write a hit song. And even when you're writing a song and you know this one's not going to be a hit, you know it has to be a really good B-side. So you're definitely writing to the audience to a degree. And that, again, you know, that alters my creativity. And you could argue it alters it in some negative ways, but you could argue that it alters it in some positive ways too, because it forces me constantly to think outside the box and out of my comfort zone and do things that I may normally not do. And sometimes, you know, I might end up working with a company or a sponsor that's a really good fit that I want to do something for. And that forces me to build a type of thing that I normally would have avoided for whatever reason. And that can be really great. It can be really liberating at the same time. So again, it's a two sides of the same coin, right?
Yeah. And I imagine like it's kind of just a blanket statement. Most creators are their own worst critics, typically.
Yes.
So I would imagine that having honed an edge of professionalism for always being forward facing, always being audience facing, that you've probably managed to couch a lot of that doubt, that criticism that would creep in normally when you don't have that constant feedback.
Yeah, you know, I find that it's funny because in terms of a crafter, I think that I'm not that bad of a critic on myself. I think I'm actually very forgiving of my own work, and I often think that it is better than it is. I'm not that highly skilled of a crafter. I'm okay at it and I do a lot of it, but I'm not like, there's many people better than me. And I recognize that and I see other better work, and that's okay. I never feel too bothered by my abilities as a crafter or where I have problems or flaws or whatever, because that's kind of my brand too. Like that's my message, is that those things are okay. However, it's a completely different thing as a content creator and as a video maker. I am so self-conscious and stressed out and about the quality of my videos and my channel. And that is where I'm the worst enemy of myself. And, you know, reading numbers too much, comparing myself to other content creators, not just in analytics, but in video production. And that's where I really struggle with creativity and self-doubt, is on the video end of things. The crafts are actually easier to accept issue.
I can understand that very well. I'm pretty much kind of like that in any avenue of creativity that I enjoy. I've just always been very, very much a self-doubter. I don't know what it is or why, but I need that kind of constant, am I doing this right? Is this okay? You know, is somebody enjoying this? What's not working?
Yeah.
And using that to kind of fine tune the way that I approach any given hobby.
It's funny too, because one of the issues when you make something and you put it out to the world like that on that stage, not in a little community where you're just a community member sharing your work with other community members, but when you're a content creator and you put it on a platform, you're inviting criticism. And that's a really tricky thing, because I get so much flack for the quality of my stuff. You know, people want to be jerks and be like, you suck at painting, you suck at this, why are you doing this? You know, these kind of things. And it's a little bit tricky to deal with because, as I said, I'm always trying to balance how advanced something is versus how user-friendly it is, and also trying to balance time involved. So I possess the skill and the materials and the tools and everything to make things that are far better than anything I'm making on the channel. I could spend a month making one project that is so intricate and detailed and just beautiful and way nicer than anything I've ever made. But I can't do that as a content creator because it would kill my output. It just doesn't work in terms of views and stuff to drag something on that long. And also, I don't want to make something where it's too involved with like sculpting and resin casting and airbrushing and all these things. I try to use them a little bit and sparingly, but oftentimes I'll pick up a crappy paintbrush and paint with that instead, just because I feel like it's less intimidating for the average viewer, for the people that I'm trying to help. So it puts me in this funny place where I'm stuck often thinking, oh, I should make this nicer so that people don't give me a hard time about the effort I put into the painting, but I don't want to make it too nice because I don't want to make it too complicated. So it's a really difficult balance, and that's something that I'm constantly fighting with, trying to figure out how to balance on the channel.
Well, man, like I would have to say fuck the trolls. I mean,
yeah.
You're doing is working.
I mean, that's the reality, is like, screw them, like, make your own channel. You get big.
Absolutely.
Like, you do it.
Yeah. I don't have to deal with that as of yet, at least. Sorry about the dogs barking. But I imagine that would eat me up a lot. That kind of negativity constantly. I hate running across it on the internet. So I am very loath to engage in a lot of larger arenas because of that. But I can't even imagine what some of you guys have to deal with.
Yeah, and it can be really a bummer, and it just kind of makes you sad about humanity. And you're going, you know, I'm not like some controversial channel, big topic. It's like a little hobby thing. It's just a guy sharing his passion with other people, helping them. How can you hate that so much? But there just are people like that. Jealousy is a big thing, and you know, some people are just like that, and it gets to me and it bothers me to a degree. But actually, what bothers me more is when I see it directed to other people. So it's easier to take it to yourself versus when you see it to other people, other content creators, or even like in the Facebook groups where there's just a guy sharing something and somebody's a jerk to them. I can't handle that, because like, this is just a guy sharing his thing, looking for some feedback. You don't have to be a total, I don't want to swear, you don't have to be a you know what about it.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I don't have time for it. Okay, so one of the questions that I kind of like to ask up front is, how and when did you find gaming itself? How did you get involved in the hobby?
Same time, about 4 years ago. It was like instant going from gaming to crafting. So several years ago, I didn't play RPGs. I played Magic a lot, board games, but never tabletop stuff like any kind of role-playing or skirmish games like that. A friend asked if we wanted to try D&D. She really wanted to run it, and I was super reluctant. I didn't really want to play. It didn't appeal to me, but being a good friend and wanting to be supportive, I said, yeah, I'll give it a shot. I played a game or two. I really liked it, and I was instantly drawn to wanting to run my own game, and I had no idea about how to do that. So I turned to YouTube, and I was just looking for general how to D&D. What is D&D stuff? And somehow the algorithms led me more onto stuff like DM Scotty, and at the time, Drunkens and Dragons, RuneSmith, Runehammer now. And I knew, I was like, wow, this is super cool. I want to build stuff. Because the first couple of games I played, I had a difficult time with it only being theater of the mind in terms of spatial reasoning. I wanted things that showed where people were. I really did. So when I wanted to run my game, I knew I wanted to have that. And the second I found out that there was people that built cool things, I needed to build cool things. And that's what I did. And I built a setup for my first game. It was a big swamp board. I built like a 2x4. I did the thing that I advise people not to do, which is I built one big giant thing for one encounter, but I learned a lot on it, and I built a little chapel for it, and it was great. And a couple of weeks later, I had a YouTube channel. So that's how it went.
Yeah, I am very much the same way with playing in person. I definitely prefer to have miniatures and terrain. The game, speaking of D&D 5e at least, is all measured out and meted out in measurements.
Yeah,
it all gives you feet, and so being able to know when you cast a fireball, this is who is included, these are not included, is extremely helpful.
Yeah, and getting everyone on the same page so there's not disagreements. And just what I really dislike about pure theater of the mind, and one of the things I dislike when playing in games online on stream, is that I do like the idea of it being more freeform and narrative. And hey, am I close enough to hit that guy? And the DM going, yeah, sure, you're close enough to hit that guy, because it works in the moment. But what I hate is time wasted in games. I hate when there's just, looking up rules or figuring stuff out. And one of those things is, oh, like, so where am I? Where's he? Oh, I thought I attacked that guy. Oh, no, you can't. He's behind a thing. Oh, I thought you said there's just so much time wasted discussing and trying to get everybody on the same wavelength of what the lay of the land is. I can't handle that. So that's why I love terrain. And that can just be jelly beans and a battle mat. And that's really all you need. But if you're going to have jelly beans and a battle mat, if you like making things, why not make it look better? You don't have to, but if you like making it, you might as well.
That's a fair point. And I have played in a lot of games with people who do theater of mind, and we don't usually have a lot of issue, but it is a massive part of that is because of player choice.
Yeah.
Choosing people who are not going to hang up on those kinds of things and are able to just narratively roll with whatever happens makes a huge
that comes down to the whole other conversation of selecting an appropriate group that fits together, is on the same page. That's a session 0 thing, right?
Yeah.
And you can absolutely do it, but it's harder. You have to, just like anything, you have to find the right people. Same with playing with terrain. There's a lot of people who get hung up on that and don't like that and find it distracting. So you have to find the right group of people in any situation. So
very true. And that's kind of the hard thing that a lot of people, I think, in the community end up facing, which is one of the things why the internet is so fantastic, because you can find just about anybody.
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot easier. Okay. So we have a question from somebody in the audience. Christopher Stewart asks, do you have advice to get started for those of us who just don't really have any time to do a hobby?
It's difficult to find a way to, if you straight up don't have time for a hobby, and if we're assuming that you mean taking up terrain building or crafting for gaming, it is a time heavy hobby. So not really sure. I'd say my advice would be find a way to make time. Time is a resource. We all have the same amount of hours in a day, and we have a certain amount of responsibilities and things that we do where we allocate that time. And certain things are outside of our control, and we have to allocate 8 hours to the job and an hour to commute and an hour to, there's these things you have to do in sleeping, but there always is, almost always, a certain amount of hours that we self-allocate. And I don't want to assume about anybody, but I know this was true of myself, and it is true of other people. A lot of time, those available hours, that might not be much, might be 1 or 2 hours in a day, we self-allocate to wasteful things. Watching TV, sitting on the couch, playing on our phones, just like scrolling. And you think, I have no time. If you walk away from your devices, you can make time. Now, if you're working 2 jobs and you're in university, you don't probably have time to allocate, and maybe this isn't the time to think about trying to squeeze in maybe find a hobby that's less time intensive.
Yeah, that was going to be my very unhelpful answer, was if you don't have time for a hobby, role-playing games and crafting are probably not the place to start.
No.
Honestly.
Like video games in that sense are better because you can just pick it up, drop it. But when it comes to playing role-playing games with other people, you're scheduling, you're trying to align a lot of people. People start relying on you, people adjust their lives. Like it's an obligation, it's a responsibility. Yes. So it's not really ideal if you don't have some flexibility in managing your own time.
Yeah. If you're sitting down to play a session and it's not at least 2 to 3 hours, it's probably not really going to be worth it, truthfully. And that is, honestly, that's one of the biggest barriers that I have found into getting people into gaming in general, is the time commitment. You sit at a table for how long and just talk to each other? And
just finding, we all know it, trying to get 5 or 6 adults on the same Saturday night, it's an impossible task. It's a wonder that this hobby even exists. I don't know how.
Yeah, I am very, very fortunate in that regard. My gaming group has been going for about 19 years now, and we play weekly at my house.
That's insane to me, playing weekly.
Yeah.
Like, just the amount of work for the DM and also scheduling, that's crazy.
The fact that it's weekly, that's been a saving grace, honestly, because we know if a majority of the group can get together, we're getting together and playing.
You're not rescheduling if people aren't around. You know, you miss a game, whether there's another one next week.
Yep. Your character goes passive. We deal with you if we have to. Otherwise, you're drooling in the background while everybody else is doing stuff, and we move on. Okay. So one of the talking points that I wanted to bring up is the creative process it's a very ambiguous thing to try to nail down. It involves a myriad of different things for different people, but are there any consistents at play here? Is there anything that you have found that fits kind of universally amongst all creators?
That is a broad question. Like, what is the unifying thing amongst creators?
As a part of the creative process. If anything at all.
Ego and having to have things in the world that didn't exist yesterday but exist today because of you, and you're amazing and you did that thing. I think creative people have egos. I think artists have egos, and the things we make are the excrement of those egos, for better or for worse. And I think that ties creatives together. They won't all admit it. I'll admit it though. And I think that's also what makes certain creatives more successful than others, because of how dominant that ego is and how much they let it dictate them and guide them. Because the more you ride that lightning, well, probably the more you're going to succeed.
Yeah, that's a very, very good point. For me, like, I am a creator because if I don't, it starts to kind of drive me crazy. Yeah. Like, I have to get it out. Mm-hmm. I usually get too many ideas kind of start bouncing around in my head, and it creates this really weird headspace. And if I don't vent it either on paper or typing it on a screen or what have you, it starts to eat away at me a lot.
Yeah, and part of it is the therapy too. Like, I would argue that most creative people have some sort of egotism in their psyche, but also probably have some sort of mental issues in their psyche. Usually the more creative people are not the most stable or mentally balanced or happy people. And I feel that sometimes a lot of people turn to art of any kind as therapy. And that whole, if I don't do this, if I don't create something, I'm going to go crazy. I can only go so long without making something. And I think that has to do with mental health, just dealing with stresses and whatever level of mental health you have. But I think that getting that stuff out, that therapy, is a driving force of creators, because it makes them feel right in the moment. When you're doing it, it's like a drug, right? You feel like you're okay, and you have to keep doing it. I don't know, maybe that's just me, but I feel like there's a lot of people who would feel that way.
No, I can agree, at least to a certain extent. Like any good art is an expression, typically. You can make art that's specifically for consumption, but typically, if you feel like you are creating art, that's because you're typically pouring a part of yourself into it. It's an expression of whatever emotional state that you might currently be in, and I think that that's a really healthy form of therapy, one that a lot of people need in their lives that they sometimes don't act on.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have that missing. Yep. And I think that now, in the last several years, I think there's been a huge surge in the everyday person finding that. You have all these people doing their Etsy stuff, their different hobbies, their different crafts. Like, I crochet doilies for soap and I sell them on Etsy, and I made this website on Wix to sell them. Like, people are finding their things. Even the fact that adult coloring books is now like a multi-million-dollar industry. That didn't exist 10 years ago. But these are for people who just like, they have to get something out, they have to do something, and it's just guided art. You know, they might not be able to just come up with something and do something, but grab some pencil crayons and a book and color. And that's why so many people are turning to things like that.
Well, and that's one of the best ways to jumpstart your creativity, is to be given boundaries, is to be given walls or lines to stay inside of. And then all of a sudden, that's a springboard. Okay, these are the only possibilities I have. Well, what if I do this? Then I could take it in this direction. So a lot of times those are really healthy things to have at the very beginning, at least.
I think so.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. So trucking right along. So you've talked about this a few times on your channel, and you mentioned it a little earlier, but you had a pretty successful music career once upon a time.
Successful. It was a
well,
success,
you were touring.
Success is relative, right?
Yeah, you toured, which is pretty impressive in and of itself. So kind of what I want to know, though, is were there any unique skills or techniques of the creative process that you were able to take from that experience and apply to the new endeavor?
Yes. I would say there's two parts to my current endeavor. There's crafting and there's video making, two things that are joined. Music really set me up well to make videos. I had never made a video before. I never knew anything about it, but producing music, electronic music on a computer made my brain just feel comfortable and understand linear-based editing. When I saw a video editing program, I went, wow, this is like a really dumbed down version of music production. Like, there's so much stuff about the tech of video that I didn't know. Cameras took me a long time to, even now I'm still learning how to use a friggin' camera, but the actual editing, I could see somebody wanting to make a video, then opening up video editing software and going, oh my, like, no. To me, I looked at it and went, wow, this is child's play compared to Cubase. I'm used to working with 100 tracks. Now I got 3. Come on, this is easy. So that set me up for that. Running a band in terms of merchandising and branding and PR and all that kind of businessy stuff, accounting, business stuff, that set me up for making a channel, right? And then in terms of actually being a creator and building things and the art form, obviously there's not a lot of like direct correlation between music and a physical art like I'm doing now, but there are certain things that carried over, and a lot of it has to do with aesthetics. Like the music I was doing previously relied a lot on atmosphere and tone. I was not a very good musician. I'm not a trained musician. I can't read music. I can't actually play music. But what I was really good at was sound design and creating atmospheres and faking it, like hiding my lack of musical ability with cool things. And that's what I do with terrain. I'm not that skilled at doing it. I'm not that good at painting or whatever, but man, can I slap some moss on it and a wash to make it look grimy, and I can come up with a story, and I can be like, I'll just put like a branch here to cover that crap. And like, and sort of that mentality of thinking of finished products or projects and how they make people feel when they look at it versus all the technical things in between. And I think that's what I carried over from music into what I'm doing now, I think.
And that makes good sense. You know, the ability to kind of see the end goal and constantly be adjusting your approach so that you can hone in on that end goal. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I have played music before, but it's been a very long time, and I never did it professionally. It was only in school. So I definitely can see the correlation that you're talking about. And kind of
I was
how to get there.
Yeah, and I was never really, I mean, truly, I was a musician by definition because I created music. But I can't play music, right? Like I was a producer, so I took pieces and bits and I put them together and I made a thing, and that's still what I'm doing now. Except instead of drum samples, it's bits from model kits, found objects. So it's kind of similar in a really abstract way.
The kit bashing of music.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. That's awesome. I figured there was probably quite a bit that kind of overlapped in those two arenas specifically.
There's definitely more overlap to the video and channel running and business side than the hobby side.
Right. And that makes
for sure
sense. Yeah, I did independent film for a little while. I tried to, but it was a very, very daunting business, I guess you would call it, trying to get into. It's definitely one of those things where everybody wants to succeed overnight. Nobody wants to put in the legwork to get there. So you end up trying to do everything yourself. And I tried to teach myself to do video editing, and I found out very quickly I do not have the patience for it.
Yeah.
And it scares the shit out of me.
Yeah. Like I said, I probably would have been the same way if I hadn't had 15 years in working music on a computer, because it is intimidating and it's frustrating, and it doesn't even make sense. Like, what am I doing here? What are all these buttons? There's so much stuff. Luckily, through music, I had a very slow, natural progression into it. I started messing around with that stuff when I was like 12 years old in Fruity Loops, and I started basic and slowly built my way up comfortably. So doing that with video from zero would have been really daunting if I didn't already have some level of comfort with those sort of programs.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the reasons why your channel has done so well, is because you hit the ground with what shows as a lot of experience. So you didn't, even though we have seen the progression of your channel and your abilities through the years, I think you started with a really healthy understanding of what you were doing.
Yeah, and like I said, I didn't know anything about cameras. There were so many problems. I broke all the rules about like white balancing and filming on a phone. And there's a lot of stuff that I did wrong. But what I got right was trying to make a cohesive branded package. From the beginning, Blackmagic Craft was an entity and it had a vibe, right? That was the thing. It had a vibe. And I think that's missing from a lot of content. Video 1 is a Blackmagic Craft video. Video 200 is a Blackmagic Craft video. It's not just a thing I made. And I'm really glad that I nailed that in immediately somehow by fluke. But it was kind of that inherent knowledge of when you're a musician or like a producer, whatever, it's the idea of completing your album cover before you write a song. Right? You spend all the time making the album cover, and it's like, that's gonna be so cool. That's the album cover. It's gonna be called this, and then you write the music to match that, not the other way around. That's kind of what I did with the channel. I built a few things, and I came up with the idea of Blackmagic Craft so I could make a Facebook page and post stuff there. And yeah, it was the whole cart leading the horse kind of thing.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because I have a one shot that I'm planning on running in January, and I haven't planned what I'm going to do for that one shot yet, but I've already made the screen logo.
That absolutely applies to gaming too. Like if you're going to run an adventure, especially if you're doing like an online thing where you're gaining interest, like an interest post, or you're making the overlay, you're making the teaser for it, you do that before you even write the adventure. And it's the kind of thing that a lot of people laugh at, but I think it's a healthy exercise of, what do I want this to be? And you make this kind of like icon of what you expect it to be, and then you actually make that thing. You don't just like blindly go through. And it's about creating boundaries for yourself and limitations, because limitations are very important sometimes.
And like you mentioned earlier, it gives you a tone. You know what note that you want to hit and where you're headed through everything else. The design of your dungeon, who you choose as NPCs, where the plot might, eventually go, who you might pick as players. Knowing the genre and the tone of the kind of game that you're going to run up front before you do anything else will give you the drum beat to march to.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the same as, you come across a cool picture online and you're like, I want to run a game that embodies what this piece of artwork makes me feel, right? And I think that can be really powerful. And obviously I can't quite do that with when I'm building a piece of terrain, but I sometimes will have an idea in my head, like, or a piece of inspiration, and that will guide me. But then once I'm done building the thing, then I have to go into the creative process of making a video and transcribing my build into an enjoyable, entertaining, and like educational thing. There's a challenge. I have to be very focused and aware of everything I'm doing, because I have several different ways I format videos depending on the project, because certain projects suit a different format better. So a lot of time what I'll do is I'll build the thing, and before I start editing the video, I'll photograph it and I'll make the thumbnail. I'll be like, what am I trying to pull in from the audience with this thumbnail? What am I trying to show? And then I'll focus the video around it, make the title of the video before I make the video, so that I know how to develop that video, so that, if the title is maybe answering a question, that the video is the question, or the other way around, maybe the title is the answer to the question that the video makes. You kind of got to be aware of that, because the thumbnail is the album cover, right? So
yeah, I think that makes perfect sense. It's really neat to see that kind of transitions between multiple different types of creativity. Okay, one of the other talking points that I wanted to touch on, there are times when creating becomes difficult. Often whenever the momentum of a new project has lessened. So what do you do when motivation or inspiration runs dry? When the muse has grown silent, where do you find yourself putting the focus in order to regain your momentum?
Well, this is something I have to do constantly, because I have an obligation to build. Because it is my job, I don't have the luxury of just doing things when inspiration strikes. Monday morning, I got to wake up and I got to start building something no matter what. And there's I would say that 60% of the time I go into the work week with an idea and inspiration and a thing I want to do. And it's great. It just happens. But like 40% of the time, either I have no friggin' clue what I'm going to do, or I'm just really not in the mood. Like I can't come up with something that gets me excited to build. And I think it's really dangerous if I build things that I'm not excited about. Because that stuff translates, even if I were to try to hide it and we're building a cool thing. I mean, people are not stupid. You can tell when somebody is enthusiastic about what they're doing versus what they're not. So I try to build things I'm excited about, and that can be really friggin' hard to come up with those things. So there's a lot of times I go to bed Sunday night and I don't know what I'm doing the next morning. And usually the way I deal with that is I just do it. Like I just sit down, and sometimes it's as simple as grabbing the material, just picking a material. It's going to be foam core. It's going to be a piece of foam. It's going to be a piece of cardboard. I don't know, just grab a piece of material, put it on the desk, grab a knife, and just go. And just start cutting something, just start doing something. Because for me, as a creator, I tend to, even when there's things I want to do, I usually start out really slow in terms of that excitement and inspiration. I kind of fumble around for the first, 30% of the project. There's always this tipping point of when I cross this threshold of all of a sudden my mind's eye can see what I'm making in the finished form. And I'm like, that's what it's going to be. And then you start going, you're like, oh man, if I just add this, I'm going to cut out this. I'm going to rip that off and I'm going to put this on. And there's always that tipping point of getting excited. So the trick is just build 30% of something or whatever your tipping point is and get to that point. And eventually you should cross that threshold. And that has never failed me. Even projects that at the end of it aren't really that exciting to me, there still is always that, oh yeah, aha, okay, that's what this is. And let's do this. So you just gotta start. You just have to do it. I don't know. You have to force yourself. And that sounds unpleasant, but you have to force yourself, even if it's a hobby, like miniature painting. I'm gonna be honest, I freaking hate miniature painting. I don't like it. I like building and I like painting my builds, but actual miniatures, it's not my jam. It's something I have to do. It's associated with the greater hobby that I need to do. and I like having them finished, but I don't like the process. So for me, that tipping point is more at like 70%. Like I get through, like I paint it for 70% of the time. I'm like, this is awful. This looks terrible. Oh my God, I don't like this, blah, blah, blah. I want to quit. But then there's always that tipping point of like, oh, okay, it's so close. I'm just going to add this detail. Now I can put a base on it, and I like it and I love it. And then I'm excited by it being done. And I look at the next one and go, I don't want to do that.
Yeah, I am very much I enjoy building and figuring out all of the kind of pitfalls and the problems and doing all of that portion of it much more than I enjoy painting.
Yeah.
I like getting things to the point where I can black bomb it.
Yes. Black bombing is awesome because then it ties it all together and you're like, this looks good. But then it's like starting all over again when you start painting.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And yeah, it's difficult for you. I think part of the thing that helps is that it is your job, that, you know, there's a dependency on, you have to get it done. And for a lot of creators who don't have that, I think it's more difficult to push yourself to just do it.
Yeah. And I think a lot of the time, you know, I've said this in multiple arenas and like Q&As and stuff about it's my job. And a lot of people will be quick to misinterpret that as a complaint. It's not a complaint. It's just a reality, right? It's my job. So I'm not complaining. I made it my job. I spent all my time and effort and to make it my job. It's because it's what I wanted. Doesn't mean it's all great, but it's what I wanted and it's good. But there is a great benefit to that as a creator in the sense that when I go back to about time management, sometimes it's just easier to play a video game or sit on the couch. If you don't have an obligation, it takes so much more willpower to choose painting that mini instead of watching the pilot of The Mandalorian for the third time. Like that's literally been my struggle this week, is, you know, trying to not let myself just watch Mandalorian over and over and over again. But I can't. I have to go to work, you know. It's so that it's not a complaint. That's a good thing. It actually forces me to do stuff. Like today, I was super stressed out. I was having a really miserable, anxious day. I was in a bad place and I didn't want to build the thing I was building for the video. But once I crossed that threshold, man, like what I'm building today, I got way more done than I thought. And it's like it's super cool and it's awesome. If it wasn't my job, I would not have made it. And I'm glad that I did. So
that's a fair point. Yeah, I think, you know, it got brought up in chat. I think crafting being a form of therapy is, well, anything that's art is a kind of therapy. Again, we kind of talked about it being a cathartic kind of exercise, but it's also a form of escapism.
Yes.
You know, you get to take all of that crap that's going on in your head that you can't control, and for however much time you're going to sit down and dedicate, there is something you can control.
Yes. And for me, that's specifically true. I suffer from various mental illnesses of depression, anxiety, all that fun stuff of the modern age. But my biggest problem is anxiety and paranoia, and just like really focusing on stuff and not being able to shake it and having overwhelming anxious thoughts. And that's why doing a hobby is so vital to me, because when I'm doing it, once I get into the zone, it's like the only thing that can shut my brain up. It like, there's nothing else. I've tried everything, like hanging out with people, even playing games doesn't do it for me. Playing games does not block it out, nastiness, doing whatever various fun things, going to a movie, all these things, they don't work. But building things does, because it requires so much focus that it absolutely, for the time I'm doing it, shuts everything out. The world stops. And that's a really important thing. Unfortunately, it usually comes back as soon as you're done. It's not like it's not a cure, but it's certainly a break and a delay. And for me, that's why this hobby just resonated with me so strongly.
And I think that's a good thing. You know, gaming for me is that kind of escape. Crafting is too, but much more is gaming, because I get to step outside of myself and kind of try out new emotions I might be dealing with, or thoughts that I might be having, or just try being a different person for 3 or 4 hours.
Yeah.
It's very much kind of an escapism for me. Cool. We have another question from the chat. Nathan with Quinion Budget Crafts asks, other than just doing it, how would you suggest learning to paint better?
Well, just doing it is really the answer. But I think to get better at painting, and I mean, I'm by no means an expert at this because I'm not a great painter, but what I've done myself to try and improve my painting is to be really mindful of painting. For me, one of the reasons I didn't improve as a painter as quickly as other people might is because I didn't like it. I rushed through it. It's like I just got it done. And you kind of have to stop and smell the roses a little bit and learn to appreciate it, and not feel like it's a task that just has to be over with, and take the time with the steps and don't do the same thing over and over and over again. Every time I've built so many things that have wood on them, and I'm pretty sure that every single time I've painted wood, I've done it slightly differently, because even when I get a result that's really good, the next time I do it differently, not maybe by a lot, but it's always slightly differently. I never follow that same formula. And I think that helps me as a painter, because the more if you look at, here is the end point that you want. And if you learn how to get from point A to point B, you learned how to get from point A to point B. But once you learn that, if every time you try to get to point B, you take a slightly different path, it really actually forms a lot more skill and knowledge in your mind, and it will help you get to point C, D, E, F, G, I think. I think it's important to just always experiment and keep trying different things and just try to enjoy it, because the trick to getting good at anything is enjoying it enough to put in the time to learn it. I'm not making that up. That's a thing. That's a thing people say, right? If you enjoy something enough to get in your how many hours, do X amount of hours, and you're an expert, you just got to enjoy it enough to do it. So learn to enjoy it. That's the answer.
Absolutely. I would say you have to find your method. You have to find what about it you do enjoy and focus on that. Definitely learn to step outside of your boundaries, but you have to figure out your method first.
Yep. And just as important is learning through doing, what is it that you don't like? Why is painting, why is it difficult, or why is it annoying? If you can define that, then you can learn ways to avoid that aspect of the thing you're trying to learn, right?
Yeah, I think that's great advice. Okay, so just a couple more points, and we have another question. So I think let's do this third talking point. So one of the struggles that I think many creators face is when to seek out more information or instruction versus when to just wing it and learn as you go. Is there a hard, fast delineation between these two for you?
For me personally, there is always a hard line between the two, because, and this is so counterintuitive to what I do, I don't rely on resources. I would not use me as a channel as a person. If I wasn't me and Black Magic Craft was somebody else, I would still watch it, but I would watch it for inspiration and ideas, not to learn anything. I would watch it, I would take it all in, and I'd be like, cool, he built a house, he did this, and this. And then I would sit down and I wouldn't do any of those things, but I'd still build a house. And I think that it's going to be different for different people. I think that it's important to use both. It's important to have some proper structured learning. There's a reason the education system exists, because learning through teaching is important. There's people who know these things and they try to teach you, and it's good to recognize that. But it's just as important to just learn by trial and error and getting your hands dirty. And in terms of a hobby, I would equate it to the same as if you want to be good at a hobby, you can't just watch videos and read magazine tutorials and you'll never be good at it that way. You also can't just, well, I mean, maybe you could, but I wouldn't recommend only learning through doing, because you would then be limited by your own resources in your head, which, I mean, they are limited. You only have so many ideas. So you need a bit of both. It's like a kid, man. They have to go to school and learn algebra and to read and all this, but they also have to go to the creek and poke frogs with sticks. You need both of those things, and that's true of hobbies as well. You gotta learn your algebra. You gotta go poke some frogs with sticks.
This channel does not endorse poking frogs with sticks. I'm just saying. Nor does it
don't hurt them.
Algebra.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And I think different people learn different ways. I think there are people who learn hands-on, and there are people who learn by reading. I'm definitely, like you, I'm definitely somebody who needs both. I can't read an entire manual and then go do something.
Yeah.
I can read a chapter and then go try that part, fail, figure out why it doesn't work, go back to the book and say, oh, that's because this other part tells me I shouldn't be doing it the way that I thought I should do it. But I have to go through that process. That's just the way that my brain works. And I think having resources when you feel like you need them is very helpful. So that way you're not treading over ground that someone else may have figured out an easy solution for. You're not banging your head against the wall trying to find a solution that already exists.
And I mean, it doesn't make sense to decide, hey, I'm going to be a cart builder. I'm going to learn woodworking. I'm going to build carts for horses. You don't need to have to design a wheel. People already did that. You can go and be like, what is a wheel? How does it work? Oh, it has to be round and you put it on an axle and it turns. Cool. Learn that from him. But learning how to put an ornate design in that wheel, learn by doing.
Very good point. It's a good distinction. Okay, so we've got one more question from the audience. This one is from Juice from Master the Game. He says, how has your family reacted to you becoming a professional YouTuber?
Highly, by the way. That my family has reacted very positively, both my close family and my extended family. I should point out that it was by my family's guidance and like motivation that I became a professional YouTuber. So I was doing it as a full-time job on top of my full-time job. I was doing both and managing both, and it was burning out and it was nasty, but I wanted it so bad and I loved it so much. I hit a point where I couldn't do both and I was really stressed out. And it was literally my grandma was in town visiting and my wife was there. And like the two of them basically had an intervention with me, and they're like, you need to quit something. You can't do this anymore. You need to quit something. And both of them were like, quit your job. You know, if this is what you want to do and it's working, then go for it. And I was so blessed. They were so supportive, and because that was my holdup. I knew internally I was ready to do it and I could do it, but it's such a scary thing to do to your family. Like, you know, to be a father and a husband and, you know, a caregiver and all this stuff, to make that kind of jump feels very irresponsible. So to have your family not only saying it's okay, but actually telling you that it's the thing you should do, that made it a lot easier. And, you know, the rest of my family is like really supportive. I mean, I have a really wonderful family in general. My extended family is very, very good. So I'm lucky that way, that they're supportive. They get it. I don't have to explain it too much. I mean, my grandma doesn't really understand what I do, but she thinks the houses that I build are really neat. But most of them, you know, they understand it and they support it, and, you know, think it's pretty darn cool, actually.
I was going to say that's actually really awesome that your grandmother was part of your intervention. I don't even know if my grandparents know what YouTube is.
Yeah, so. I mean, mine doesn't either. She really doesn't understand fair. What it is. She just knows that I spend a lot of time in this room. I build things, and that people watch it, and I somehow make money doing it. So she's like, "That's great. Do that thing. Like, be your own boss. Go for it." She like my background, my family, they're farmers. They own their own businesses. It's all about like provide for yourself. Don't go work for some company in an office and expect them to take care of you. Go provide for yourself. And while a lot of people would make fun of this career, my family of hardworking farmers are like, that's providing for yourself. You're building your own business. And so they get that aspect of it. And that's the most important thing for them to get.
That's awesome. A large part of my family is very rural. I live in a fairly large city, or in a suburb of a fairly large city, but my roots are in the sticks, very much so. And they are definitely not the kind of people that would be understanding of how much time I spend on the internet talking to people from far away. But it's really cool that they can recognize what you have going and can not only encourage it, but like you said, not insist is the wrong word, but push in a good way.
And I think what helped is that, I mean, YouTube and this hobby were just the newest incarnation of my creativity. Like they were already used to me being a musician for 15 years and making music on the side and making albums and going and traveling and playing shows and doing all this stuff and trying to do that. So this wasn't that unusual to them. I always had these kind of crazy hobbies that, I was passionate about and were a little bit weird and they didn't fully understand, but that was just part of me. So this just seemed normal to them. And I think they were just happy that, finally I found something that was a lot more profitable than music, because music was not very profitable.
Well, I'm really, really glad that it's worked out for you, man. Because it certainly has worked out for a lot of the rest of us.
Yeah, it's hard. It's not. I mean, it's not something everybody can do, and I don't know. I'm lucky, but I also don't believe that luck exists. I believe that luck is preparation meeting opportunity, and that's what my channel was. It was preparation meeting opportunity. So,
yeah, like even just having watched your videos, you and I haven't had a lot of social interaction over that time, but we've had a little here and there. And it's apparent that you've worked your ass off. So you very much deserve the success that you've gotten. And I don't think it's a matter of luck. I think it was a matter of, like you said, knowing what you needed to do and just simply doing
it. Yeah. And to be fair, doing that does not necessarily equal success. There's a lot of people who put in the work and deserve the success, and just things don't work out. And there's certainly people who don't put in the work and get lucky.
That is true.
So, it is what it is. That's the way the world works. And it's unfortunate. Not everybody gets what they deserve. But I do feel like, me personally, I've gotten exactly what I deserve. It's like I put in work and it paid off. And that's what I feel everybody should get. It just doesn't always work that way.
That's a very, very hard truth, but it is a truth nonetheless. Okay, we've got one more question from the audience, and then I've got the big burning question that I'm going to jump into. So Trapped in the Matrix asks, I am starting a new D&D campaign soon. Any tips I need to know? It's a big box.
That is a broad, like, new, for the first time, new group, new campaign with an old, like, there's so many things. Where do we even start with this?
That's a whole other episode, truth be told.
So the universal advice I would give is don't worry about it too much. Just come up with some ideas. Don't overthink it. Just do some stuff. Have some fun with friends. If this is new in the sense of you've never run one before, it's going to be fine. It's going to be absolutely fine. And if you waste too much effort and time stressing out and planning, you're going to burn yourself out and worry, and it's going to be for nothing. So just chill, take it easy, have fun with it, and remember that all your friends are probably going to be super pumped and thrilled that you did this for them. So just try to enjoy it. Don't get too hung up on worrying about it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I first started playing whenever I was probably 12, give or take, because I had seen some older people in my Boy Scout troop playing, didn't understand what they were doing, but kind of understood what kind of stories they were telling. Mm-hmm. And so we would just sit around on campouts and just talk. We didn't have books, we didn't have dice, we didn't have pencils or paper. We just talked it all out. So even if it just boils down to that, as long as you're having a good time, that's infinitely more important than whether you understand the rules or not.
Yeah.
If you can read your friends that you're playing with and tell what's working and what's not, you're already way ahead of the game.
Yeah, don't worry about the rules. Just make them up and pretend you know them.
Yep. When you see something that is going over well at the table, just keep doing that. And if you're doing something and it's not working and people are yawning or going to their phone or they're falling off, that's when you need to change gears.
Yeah.
That's really all you need to get started.
100%.
Awesome. Okay. So the big burning question. As of last week, the Federal Trade Commission here in the States just handed down some kind of scary new regulations regarding YouTube content and how it pertains to children. I have heard a lot of concern from crafters and gamers alike that their videos might end up flagged by the bots or people who are searching for content that's deemed appealing to children. So without getting too political about this topic, what are your thoughts and concerns about this?
Yeah, this is a real nasty topic, and this has been a real, it's a bad thing for, shouldn't say, I don't know that it's a bad thing for me, but the worry about it has been a very bad thing for me over the past week or so. And I've spent a lot of time researching it and trying to understand it and trying to see where I personally land and where people like me land. The first thing is that while researching it, there's a lot of misinformation going around. There's a lot of people who like hear tidbits and stuff, and they really don't understand what any of this is about. And I'm not going to unpack that all because that's a 40-minute talk to explain what's happening and why. But a lot of the things people think it has to do with, it has nothing to do with. It's about one specific thing. It's about tracking information on kids. That's it. None of the other stuff about YouTube and kids. And this is a really challenging thing because essentially what it comes down to is that now if there is content that the FCC believes is made for children, that YouTube can't track stuff on it, which has a bunch of repercussions of, so YouTube says that's a video for kids, so we can't track it. Means we turn off targeted advertising. It doesn't turn off all your advertising, just turns off targeted advertising, which makes up most of it. It removes comment sections, it removes likes, and it basically makes your video die, go blind. It won't recommend it. Like, it kills the video. And for me, I'll be honest, if it was a simple matter of if your content is deemed geared towards children and it was just a matter of losing a percentage of your ad revenue, I wouldn't be too worried. I am a smart content creator. I have a diversified portfolio of income streams. I can lose some of my AdSense. It would suck, right? But it's not my only way I make money. So I would just make it up somewhere else and do another thing, because that's how you succeed as a content creator. But the problem is not the ad revenue, and that's what everyone focuses on, is demonetization. That's not the problem. The problem is then all the other stuff attached to it. If they shut off comments and they shut off recommendations, because then if your videos are not getting pushed, you can't grow. I can rely on Patreon. I can rely on my Amazon affiliate stuff. I can rely on merch sales. I have all these other things, but I can only push those things if I'm growing. And if I stop growing, Patreon stops growing. And this is the reality of a thing like Patreon, is that I have these people supporting me, and every month a few of them stop. But every single month consistently for the past year, for every one or two that stops, 7, 8, 10, 20 join. So it always goes up. And the reason it always goes up is because the channel gets bigger and new people find it. So if all of a sudden content like mine is deemed as child focused or motivated or whatever they're calling it this week, and I lose those features like comments and recommendations, that's the real issue, the real scary thing. Now, here's where it gets very complicated, and very stressful. YouTube rolled out two things. One is AI that scanned, I believe they've already scanned the entire contents of YouTube, because they're always scanning it anyway. I think it just has to adjust what they're looking for. They've scanned it and they've auto-flagged things that they deem as for children. And a lot of creators go into their videos and they see little things like that. These ones have been marked for kids and these ones haven't. And it's just a bot. It's AI. It's flawed. I never got a single one of those. And they also unrolled the second stage of it, which is every single creator on YouTube has to declare, is this channel made for kids? Or this channel is not made for kids, or a mix, and this video is, this video isn't. And I set mine as not made. The box is this channel made for kids? I click no, it's not made for kids, because I do not make content for kids. I make contents for adults. Is there a possibility that kids watch it? Sure, but kids also watch pornography. That doesn't mean that pornography is made for kids. So I feel safe in terms of YouTube. As of right now, the YouTube bots don't think that I'm making things for kids. YouTube has given me the tool to say that I don't make things for kids. Maybe one day they'll flag some of my videos. I've seen channels that are dedicated 100% to reviewing toys. Adult action figure collectors, not BS kids channels that are for kids, but dudes who collect Star Wars and Ninja Turtle toys and they review them. And I've watched how they're seeing this roll out, and they got 600 videos. 30 of them are deemed for kids, ones that are specifically Ninja Turtles, My Little Pony, these things, but they're not hitting like the Funko Pop stuff or the adult action figures. So they're already differentiating between this. So that makes me feel safe, because I think that my gray area stuff is a lot more black and white than a Lego channel or an action figure channel. Where it gets really, really scary is the other aspect of the reason YouTube made that little checkbox is so that if the FCC looks at a channel and says, this is made for kids and it's being tracked, they can no longer sue YouTube again, because YouTube says, now we've given that declaration over to the content creators. We've put the onus on the content creator to self-declare, which means it's every creator's responsibility to declare whether or not their content is made for kids. And so if I have declared it is not made for kids. Now, if the FCC, which is also going to be running their own bots and probably have a team of investigators or however they're going to do it, they come across my channel and they say, hey, this is made for kids. I've said it wasn't, I've broken the law, and now they can fine me $42,000 per video. So if they deemed every channel on my every video on my channel as for kids, they can fine me, I don't even want to do the math, like $12 million, like some insane thing. And that's worrisome, because when YouTube is analyzing this stuff, YouTube has the benefit of all their previous analytics. They know the reason this all started is because they know if it's a kid watching, because they track what they watch. And the AI is so smart, it knows that is a kid watching, and it's watching this and this and this, and other kids are watching this, this, this. Oh, there's bright colors in it. There's these toy lines. It knows all this stuff, and it can make a fairly informed decision. But the FCC, I don't know what they're going to be using. Maybe it's just a bunch of interns in an office that get like a printout of things and they have to make a decision. And if they see me playing with a D&D figure, even if like they don't know, it's just a toy. And the problem with it is that the guidelines they've set out to qualify whether or not it's for kids are incredibly vague. Like, to the point now that this, I believe, will probably go to the Supreme Court as an unconstitutional law, because I can't follow a law that isn't clear. If something is for kids or not, things they've outlined, they put a list of like I don't know, a dozen general things. And if I personally look at that, I'm like, nope, 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 that's not me. Nope, that's not me. But there's the word toy in it. That's the only thing I'm worried about, is that I use toys. Sometimes I use actual kids' toys from the dollar store that I convert into an adult thing. So does that mean that my kid stuff is for kids? Do they think that D&D figures that are meant for ages 14 and up are for a kid? And the problem is that it's not about whether or not it's kid oriented or not. Because what I do is not kid oriented, but the FCC is saying child appealing. Is it appealing to a child? Whether or not it's for them or not, is it appealing? And it could be argued either way. But the thing is, it's like, yes, my stuff could be appealing to kids. There's kids who are going to watch it and think it's cool. There's also kids who are going to watch, there's 11-year-old kids out there who watch a video about quantum physics, and it's appealing to that kid. Does that mean that quantum physics video is appealing to kids and it's breaking this rule? I don't know, and nobody knows, and it's really terrifying. I'm not worried if YouTube flags some of my videos and demonetizes them. That's okay. Take the hit. That's okay. But the idea that all of a sudden some bureaucrat at the FCC who doesn't know anything about what we do could just give me fines that could bankrupt my family and ruin my child's life, that's a very scary thing, and there's a lot of actual kids content creators that are in a bad position because they now have to pivot, but at least it's a little bit clearer because they're like, we are kids channels. We have to pivot and adjust, so they can do that safely. People like me, well, I don't know, like, should I all of a sudden declare everything as for kids, even though I know it's not, just to be safe? Because that's suicide for my channel, but it protects me legally. So what do you do? And there's a lot of people who are in worse off positions than me. I don't know. It's a very terrifying thing. It's been causing sleepless nights, and we don't know what's going to happen. And content like mine should be fine. It should be fine. But I also lived through when Napster happened and they started fining people for downloading music. And instead of going after Napster and these big things, they were giving mom in a trailer park with one MP3 $100,000 fine. It's happened before. It's scary. But there's also like 23 million channels that they would have to deal with this on. So I have no idea how this is going to play out. I feel like partially it's being over sensationalized because people are making a lot of money making videos about how scary this is, because people like me are watching them right now. And I don't know, it's stressful, but we'll see where it goes. And I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing, but I'm certain it already will affect my content, because I will no longer do things that convert Power Ranger toys into a D&D figure, just in case. I'll build something from scratch. And that sucks because that was good content that people liked and is useful. But until we know more, it will dictate my content. And it's worrisome because today I was building a thing that's like an evil Snow White and the Seven Dwarves house for these Seven Dwarves figures that are like really adult version. But can I say Snow White now? If I say Snow White, am my kids like, I don't know. It's not good, right? There's all sorts of links for where you can air your comments and to the FCC and sign the petitions. People should do that. It's important right now. The FCC is doing this for the right reasons. They have good intentions. They are taking the public's comments into consideration. They're taking content creators into consideration. They're having meetings with content creators. They want to do the right thing, but it's the FCC. It's a bunch of old bureaucrats that don't understand. So if you care about content creators and if you care about crafters, maybe you like toy channels or Lego channels, whatever, reach out, sign the petitions, send a message, do that stuff. It actually, I hope, makes a difference.
Yeah. I mean, I think the thing that makes it so scary is the fact that it is so subjective in how it's going to be executed and the kinds of fines that they're talking about. Like those two extreme ways of implementing this regulation is like you said, it's frightening.
Yeah.
And I had heard that they were meeting with lawyers and big, YouTube content creators and things to try to to finesse this a bit more and make it a little more.
It has to be. It's a law that was written in a time when smartphones didn't exist, and it doesn't take these things into consideration. It needs some new context. There's all sorts of other stuff too, where to follow the COPA rule, now the onus is on me, except that I don't have the ability to block kids from. If I had my own website, I would have a age restriction thing. I can't do that, so that puts us in the situation where we can't do what we're supposed to do, and it's really challenging in that regard. So I'm hoping that they are taking their time to do this methodically and smartly, and that they're not just going on a crazy witch hunt to just destroy YouTube and every content creator and make them pay. I mean, maybe they'll go after some people and find them. Are they going to go after everybody? I don't know. Maybe they'll go after some big people who are breaking the rules, like kids who are making, or people who are making really, really child-oriented stuff and just declaring it as not. Go after them, the ones with, like, you know, these nursery rhyme channels with 40 million subscribers that are operating out of China. You know, go after them because they are actually trying to game the system. People like me aren't. I don't know. Someone asked, I saw in the chat, about if it matters that I'm in Canada. Yes, it absolutely matters. The FCC doesn't care because YouTube is operated in America. So I am operating in America through YouTube. So they could absolutely fine anybody in the world they want. How they collect those fines, I don't know. Like, I don't know if Canada's going to extradite me to pay those fines if that were to happen. I don't think so, but it would certainly, they can make them and they count. And I have a feeling that this might play out where certain countries that really don't care about American law, China, Russia, these kind of places, they might take advantage of this and they might content mill out and go like, give us all the fines you want. Like, we'll see. Nobody really knows yet, and we have to just kind of wait it out. And Lee also asked, if you select that your content isn't for children, that alone should remove the risk to your channel. No, that it creates the risk. If I select that it's not for kids, that is exactly what puts me in the position to be fined by the FCC, because I am declaring legally that it is not for children and that YouTube can track the traffic and track those users because they are not children. And if the FCC believes, no, it is for kids, that's where the fine comes into play. So the flip side is I say, I'll play it safe and I'll just declare it is for kids. And then I'll just cripple my channel with the YouTube repercussions. So we're stuck between a rock and a hard place in the truest of senses. And it's not good. It's really not, this is not what I signed up for. I just wanted to build styrofoam houses.
Well, man, it's something that luckily I don't have to be as concerned about. Now that I do have concerns, you know, because one of the things they listed is, we talked about this earlier, is play acting. And I do a lot of live gaming on my channel. And I mean, technically speaking, that is live play or play acting. But
I feel like that's pretty safe though, because the play acting is specifically about kids playing make-believe and playing with their toys. I think people playing like Skype role-playing, you would have a very hard time arguing that that is appealing to children. Let's be honest, children are going to think that's super boring.
Most people do.
Right? That's not as enticing. The grayer area is crafts, like, you know, because, you know, for me, you know, using a toy, but part of me is like, my channel, if you just look at it, someone who doesn't know, take any parent and look at my channel. It's called Black Magic Craft. It's got like all this kind of evil stuff. It's really dark. It's not enticing. It's not intentionally enticing the kid. It doesn't have bright rainbows and colors and whatever. But there are other crafting channels that are definitely adult oriented that could more easily be deemed as that. Even, you know, there's a big risk here with female content creators just by virtue of girl content being more child attractive. And does this mean that, like, if more feminine kind of crafting channels that do like rainbow unicorn crafts for adults, that it's for adults or that it's for kids, like it really sets a bad precedent, and it encourages content creators to be more mature and do less family friendly content, which is not good for kids really. But the problem is that if I just say, I'm being super mature, this is not for kids, and I just start swearing and talking about violence and just making it as really really mature as possible, but I still have a Ninja Turtle figure in the video, they could say none of that matters because you have a toy that's appealing to kids. So despite all this stuff, kid wants to be there. So we don't know, like, it's all so vague, and yeah, it's a very stressful thing right now.
Well, man, I knew it wasn't something that was going to be a lot of fun to delve into and talk about, but you in particular, having climbed to where you are in the YouTube arena, I really wanted to kind of get your insight on that particular topic.
And I mean, I'm worried about myself, but I'm also worried about like other people that I enjoy. People, one that stands out to me, if anybody knows, is the Craftsman, Steady Crafting. He's one of the best content creators on the platform, doing general crafts and different things, does a lot of action figure stuff and stuff like that. He's a guy that never shows himself on camera. He has a freaking puppet standing in for him. He's not a kid's chat. Like, he is not kid oriented at all. I mean, yeah, some kids might find it appealing, but he's not meant for kids. But he's got a puppet. How is that going to be interpreted, right? And I feel scared for people like that. And I feel scared for viewers because they're going to, you know, a lot of people are going to lose content creators that they like. I don't know. We'll have to see. So the way I'm going about it is I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. And I already don't feel like I'm doing anything that's kid oriented, but I am going to be cautious of making decisions that might accidentally be thought of as that. I don't think anything is truly safe because I think anything could be argued. And we'll have to wait it out and hope for the best. And I hope the FCC is just big D swinging right now and not actually going to follow through with this stuff. I hope that they're just trying to put the fear into YouTube and trying to fix things. I take solace in the fact that I know they're doing this for the right reason. That makes me feel better. This isn't like a cash grab. This isn't a suppression of freedoms thing. This is just, they are trying to do the right thing. It just has repercussions that are very negative that I don't think they realize.
Yeah, for certain. And like, as a father of an 11-year-old son, like, it's absolutely a regulation that needs to happen. There has been more than one case where, you know, we've had to very closely monitor what my son is watching, because if he just has free reign of YouTube, there's no telling what he's going to end up watching.
And that is exactly why we're in this situation, is people not doing that. And people are talking in the chat like, well, isn't there kids app and you don't have to be 13? Yes, that's true. And that's the thing, is that you have to be 13 to sign up for a Google account, meaning if you're logged into Google on YouTube, as far as YouTube is concerned, you are of age and COPPA does not apply. People lie, kids lie, but mostly what's happening is parents are signed in and they give the device to the kid. And that's fine, because that actually absolves YouTube of the law, because somebody lied, or the parents by giving them the thing actually gives consent. The problem is that YouTube played the system, and the AI started realizing that these are kids signed into 13 plus accounts, and they knew that based on what they were watching. And they started selling them ads based on that. And they started brazenly going to advertisers and being like, hey, we can get around COPPA. We can sell targeted ads to children because they're signed in as the parent. They knew. They did this willingly and knowingly, and people should be upset at you. People shouldn't be upset at the FCC right now. Although the FCC is the scary part, this is YouTube's fault. YouTube broke the law willingly, knowingly, intentionally, and they've hung us all out to dry because of it. They paid their fine, they walked away, now they washed their hands of it, and it's our mess now. And that's very scary. But that's why this all happened, is because YouTube willingly broke the law. They knew that this was happening. They knew that kids were using the adult version of the app. It doesn't matter that the kids platform exists. The kids platform is good. It's by the book. It's fine. It's good. But that's the reality. There were some surveys saying something like 80% of parents let their 13 and under kids watch YouTube on their account. So,
yeah, not me. Never, never, never. There's shit that I have found on YouTube that I don't want to have seen.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a safe place, really. Like when you start clicking randomly, and especially with kids, there's all these troll kid stuff that is intentionally looking like kid stuff and isn't, like the Peppa Pig scare stuff, and which again, that's not what this whole thing is about. The FCC doesn't care about that. Right. That's not what this is about. This is not about the channels that exploit their children and have them playing stuff to make them millions of dollars. This is not about that. This is not about kids doing sponsored content. It's not all these things that are problems. This whole thing is not about that. It's about tracking information on kids and selling them advertising. That's all it's about.
Well,
that's a bummer on
the last note there. Well, yeah, I do hate to go out on such a negative, but we are rounding an hour and a half, and I don't want to keep you any longer than I already have. But I really do appreciate you coming on and discussing all this with me. It's been a lot of fun.
At the end of the day, I mean, I feel like I'm doing something that's good for adults, and I'm going to keep doing it because I think it's healthy and positive and an important thing to do. So I'm going to keep doing it as long as I can. And if stuff hits the fan and things go nasty, well, I'll pivot and find another way to do it. And yeah, that's about it. So yeah, just keep crafting.
Well, if anybody can figure their way through the crazy navigations ahead, I know that you can do. So
hope so. Hopefully I don't have to. Hopefully it just works itself out.
That would be the best outcome, is if just all of the dust finally settles and there's some kind of sense made of all of this. And
I mean, every year we have a it's the end of YouTube scare.
Yeah. Like
this is just the only one that actually finally affects me in some way. The last adpocalypse didn't affect me because I'm advertiser safe. But hopefully this is just another big scare and it'll settle and work itself out. I mean, YouTube wants to continue existing and continue to make money. So I hopefully find a way to make this all work.
Like I said, I'm confident that you will, man. So one last time, do you want to retouch on where you're from, where people can find you?
I feel anything? Like they probably know, but of course, Black Magic Craft, go check it out. Check out the videos, check out the Facebook. I got Instagram, which I don't talk about very much, but I post stuff there if you do that sort of thing. Got a Discord server, but that's only for Patreon. Got a Patreon, which, hey, if YouTube screws me, I'm going to need that Patreon. So sign up.
There you go. Well, everybody from my channel, this is the last that you'll see of me until December. So thank you very much for tuning in tonight, whether you're watching live or you may be watching later on. I sincerely do appreciate it. There's lots more on the channel to check out, mainly live plays and such like that, but there's also 17 previous episodes of the Help Action, also with very awesome people from the community, and there will be plenty more at some time in the future. So thank you very much, and until next time, may your dice roll high and your snacks always be within reach.
Peace out, everybody.